Hey everyone, Christian here. Let me bring this back a little bit. There we go. So, obviously we're not outside doing a palm review. We are inside. This is going to be a discussion time, and I'm going to talk about what makes a palm rare, and we're going to talk about artificial rarity versus actual rarity. And I think it's important to know that because when you go to purchase plants, it's good to know, hey, is this palm really as rare as this person is claiming it to be? Is this going, is it good value? Am I going to be able to find another one of these? So when you do that, it's good to do some research about a palm, where it's from, its cultivation habits, its seeding habits, and its cultivation difficulty. So we can start with a palm that was once rare and is now very common, the foxtail. And foxtails are seen throughout Central and South Florida. They're great growers here, although they do require a lot of fertilizer and maintenance because they have huge seed pods. I found that out the hard way by trying to have a friend saw one off with me with a garbage can down below, and it didn't get into the garbage can. It hit me right in the head, about 70 pounds worth. Not all like blunt impact, but it knocked me on the ground, and I learned not to do that again. Just let it fall to the ground and pick it up later. Anyway, so the story of the foxtail goes like this. This is about 90% accurate. This isn't going to be, every detail is not going to be perfect, but this is a story that I've been told by an Australian that's been around for a long time. So in around late 70s, say like 75, 77, an Aboriginal gentleman was in a retirement home, and he told his caretaker that there was the most beautiful palm in the world that grew in this area, and the caretaker took it as he thought he was senile, and that he didn't believe this palm existed. After the man in the retirement home, the Aboriginal gentleman, insisted, the guy rented a boat because it was apparently only you could only access it by boat. It was on these right in this kind of cliff area. You couldn't get in very well. And sure enough, they go on a boat into this little, I don't even want to call it a creek or an inlet, and they found a whole grove of foxtails. And foxtails did not exist in cultivation before this. So the caretaker decided this was a good money-making opportunity. He brought the seeds back. He grew them himself. He hid the location for about I don't know, 10. I don't know how long it was. I want to say it was about 10 years, maybe longer. But what happened is that he could kind of control the price of the seed. The seeds were $10 to $20 each. That made it. The problem is he could have made a lot of money cultivating the plants himself and then selling them off, but instead he just controlled the seed supply until the plants in, say, Australia or the Americas grew up and made perfectly. They made their own seed. So that's a good example of artificial rarity. People paying a lot of money for this plant. I mean, now it doesn't matter how old your foxtail is, because people don't really, it's not a rare palm. It's not a collector's palm anymore. It once was, but the only reason it was is because it was artificially rare. So now on the other spectrum, you have actual rarity, and we'll take, for example, let's see what we could. I'm trying to think of what I could use here. Okay, so there's a palm that's always been my sort of holy grail palm. It's called Tectophiala ferox. It grows on Mauritius, which is an island in the Indian Ocean near Reunion, east of Madagascar. This palm is absolutely beautiful. It has this dark maroon furry trunk. And there are only about a dozen that are growing along a fenced area there, and no one really wants to go and collect seed. I guess they're not allowed to. It's a previous French colony. There's a lot of people of French descent that live there, and they said that you just can't collect the seed, and apparently sheep graze the area. So I've heard of stores, people being offered seed for $80 to $100 each, which is absolutely ridiculous. And so the plant is very rare. There's only a dozen in habitat. Who knows how many in cultivation, but it's just not available. It doesn't matter how much money I hand somebody, they can't provide me with that plant. I mean, maybe there might be somebody out there, but I can't find them. I've talked to people. I mean, I used to speak French fluently, but I can still talk to people of French, who speak just French. I've tried getting in contact with people in that area. I've talked 10 years ago. I found one person that sent me some pictures, but that was it. I don't even know where he is, and I don't know how to get it, and no one else does. I've never seen it for sale, the plant or seed. I've never heard of anyone even owning one. So that to me is real rarity. Now it's a little bit artificial because of the way that the country decided to set up the fences to keep the plants away from people. The problem is that the plants can't go anywhere. So if they want to spread out its habitat, this can't happen, or just let it regrow a wild or a semi-wild population. And this happens in the U.S. too. It actually happens in Hawaii. There's a lot of palms that grow at higher elevations or on cliffs, and the only people that can get to it are people who want to go rappelling, or the rats get to it. And some of these palms have been fenced off. One example of this is Pritchardia viscosa. It's a extremely beautiful palm. It's stunning. It has this white waxy underside to the frond. I did have one plant one time. I did spend $100 for a gallon, and I was perfectly happy spending that kind of money. There's a few plants I'm willing to do that for, and that's one of them. People were jumping the fence. There's a fence again there's some pigs, I guess, that were eating all the seeds, and some people were able to collect some seeds. It's definitely not legal, but it's not. There's no like federal law that does not allow, once you've collected it, to grow it. So it's a great. That's another example of kind of like an artificial rarity. And then you gotta have plants in the middle. For example, like Sadakentia was once somewhat rare. Actually, it was very rare until they started seeding outside of Japan, and in the U.S., only the hardcore collectors had these plants. So when they started seeding in the 90s, they started becoming a little more available. It isn't the easiest palm to grow. It does die off fairly easily as a seedling compared to other plants. The same thing goes for Carpoxylon macrospermum, and this palm was actually considered extinct back in most of the 1900s. In 1987, a botanist named John Dow, he's from Australia. He went to Vanuatu, and on an island he just found Carpoxylon, and I believe he just realized he had just discovered a plant that was thought extinct for 100 years. So those seeds got distributed, and so palms might have a temporary scarcity due to new discoveries. Same thing happened to Tahina spectaculus. It was discovered in Madagascar in 2006, 2007. Seeds were made available. Again, they were expensive. They were $10 or $12. They were about $10 after shipping. I remember I spent $10 a seed on 100 seeds 10 years ago. But again, it was the ability to have some of the first plants in cultivation. That's what you pay for. So there's also some other palms that I believe are overvalued for their rarity. One example being Areca catechu, the dwarf beetle nut palm. These palms seed profusely. Even the dwarfs do, and they are not hard to grow. They actually grow fairly fast for their size, and there's a how can I explain it? There's an anticipated demand for them that these plants are going to be expensive, that they're going to be, that you're going to have to pay a lot of money, and so a lot of the growers know this and price them accordingly. You're going to spend upwards of $500 on a 7-gallon plant, and they really aren't that hard to grow. If you know where to get the seed, you're better off buying the seed and growing it yourself. You can get a lot of plants for $50 as long as you don't mind waiting. And there's no real, they're just tropical palms that happen to be dwarfs. They actually grow relatively easily. You kind of have to weed out the genetics of the semi-dwarf from the true dwarf, but still, if you were to buy 100 seed for say $100, you could get 20 plants that were true dwarfs. Maybe not that much, but maybe 10 to 15. So, you have the different types of scarcity, and then the last type is the means of entry. So, for example, a lot of copper niches were very rare, and they still are relatively rare because they are from Cuba. As an American, I don't know what the rules are now, but for 40, 50 years you couldn't go to Cuba. And so the ability to get this palm was very hard, especially in habitat. And there were plants that existed here in Florida before that. The problem is that they hybridize very easily. So you get all these hybrids, and all these hybrids exist in Florida. But getting a pure plant getting a pure, say, Copernicia Baliana or Philens was very hard. Now there are, luckily because of the internet, there are new connections that have been made, and pure seed is available now, but for a long time it was quite rare. It also grows very slowly, so you're not going to get a plant from like seed to a trunking plant in like 5 to even 10 years. It's going to take 15 to 20 years to get some good trunk on it and get a specimen plant. So people will pay a lot of money for the really big ones. So it's all about different factors that cause a plant to be rare. Now you have some of the reason my holy grail palm, Tectophiala ferox, is so rare is that it is not a fast grower. It does not seed profusely. It is fenced off from human beings, and it's hard to get to, say, Mauritius, just for me to go there and get it. And so as a result, all those factors make it very hard. There's other palms that are also quite rare, but they're not desirable. The Tectophiala is quite desirable if people knew more about it. But for example, rattan palms. Rattan is the viney pieces that are used to make like furniture or baskets, and they're actually made from spiny palm petioles. And these are mostly climbing palms. They're not very pretty. They kind of grow on other trees, so they don't stand up on their own. And they're spiny, so people don't really want them in their yard. So some of them are quite rare, but there's no demand for them. So those palms are very rare. They're just not. You're never going to really see them because no one is looking for them. So those are kind of different levels of rarity of why palms cost the way they do, why some are hard to find, why some can't be found at any price. For example, Tectophiala, which is my plant. If you ever come across Tectophiala, if you see a picture of it, then you see it. If you're from the the Indian Ocean area, I know there's some that are in the Seychelles Islands, and you happen to find a source, please contact me, because I've been looking for that plant for 15 years, and so have other people. So I don't know how many people from that region of the world watch this vlog. I assume it's probably in the single digits at best. So I'm not extremely hopeful, but you never know. But yeah, so that's pretty much it for the discussion of what makes a palm rare, and supply and demand. But why is supply low or why is demand low? And I've tried to kind of go over those things. Rattan palms aren't going to be very pretty. Supply, a lot of the tropical plants are not going to put out a ton of seed. They either have bigger seeds. For example, the double coconut. That's another good example. That palm, you can get it if you want it. It's going to cost you about $1,000 for a seed, and you got to get a special permit from the most of the countries it grows in. The native country, the Seychelles, requires only allows seed to be sent out, I think, every other year. I don't know. I haven't seen one for sale for quite some time, but it takes. It's a little bit of a gamble to buy a seed that's about 30 or 40 pounds and this big, so like half the size of a basketball, maybe bigger, and planting it in a pot, like a 100-gallon pot, and hoping you get a plant. It takes, I think it's like 5 years for the seeds to mature. So that's another rare palm. And you need a male and a female to make seeds. So you need to grow it up, like takes 30 to 40 years. You need both a male and a female. So anyway, I think I pretty much covered that. I don't want to make this too long. I don't want people to get bored listening to me ramble on. But if you have any more questions about rare palms, why they're rare, what do I think is also quite a rare plant, a rare palm, if you have a question about how rare you think a palm is, are some plants overvalued or some plants undervalued, and how easy they are to grow, leave them down below. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up, and if you are new to the channel and want to see a lot of cool palm videos, go ahead and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.